So yeah, we are live, but let me double check just to see.
All right.
This is dope.
Doing it. Ugh. Oh, baby. I'm on. Apologies for the lighting setup. It's not the greatest, but
Man, I'm in a hotel and I was like using a light right here. Oh, so yeah, we're definitely on.
Let's go. Okay, cool.
So go ahead and hit up that introduction and everything, man. You lead the way. Let's go.
Yeah, dude. So, all right, let's get it on. Well, guys, welcome to the first episode of our F1 podcast through the Chicane Media. I've got my boy Craig here. My name's Jonathan, and we're just two dudes that love talking about F1. So, honestly, there's a lot that's been happening in the whole, to start this off, in the whole F1 world, and the season hasn't even started yet, which is just absolutely insane. And, I've got a Red Bull shirt on, and so, you can probably tell I'm a Red Bull fan, but, it's a gentleman's game, right? And so there's a lot going on with the big teams right now, especially with, Red Bull and Mercedes. I know you're a Mercedes fan. And so
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on, what's been going on? So at least, because I know there's one or two big things that have been happening, in the whole circle of F1. So what are your thoughts on that?
The crazy part is I'm a Mercedes fan, but I'm more of a Lewis Hamilton fan. So when 2025, it might be a different answer to that question.
Yeah.
But as far as that goes, like we talked about it and DMing each other. It was basically like Tom Brady going to the Buccaneers. It had that type of feel, but this is if Tom Brady went to the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Not wrong.
If Tom Brady went to the Cowboys, that would have been such a parallel. And I find it kind of like ironic because him and Tom Brady are like close friends. So it's just like it's a cool move, but I like shocked at it. Like I felt like he needed that change. I feel like Mercedes is kind of in a no man's land. So I feel like that him leaving, going to Ferrari was the only move he really could have made leaving Mercedes, honestly.
Agreed. Because there's a lot of people are giving their takes, and there was one in particular that I, scrolling through F1 news and people's comments on social media. It's like, he had at this point nothing left to prove with Mercedes. He's been on the team for 11 years, and I would say, statistically the greatest driver of all time, at least in the last decade or so. And so, all good things must come to an end at some point. And so, there's the last 2 years, it's been a real struggle, with their car's performance, with their team, with every little aspect, right? And so personally, I don't blame him for jumping ship, because if I were the greatest of all time and, the last 2 years have just been like the worst, I'm just like, all right, give me a chance with somewhere else. So I think, and some people said it's a great move, right? Because
I think more freedom. People think it's a great move.
Yeah, you have more freedom. You have less responsibility, and you're already a great driver. You know how to win. You have such a good record already that you really don't have anything to lose with that.
Right.
However, now that Mercedes is without the GOAT, arguably, how can they rebuild their team? And seeing that apparently this has been in the works for probably a year or a long time from what people are saying and sources and whatnot. It's like, okay, what's their plan? Right.
Right.
Because Toto knows how to rebuild a team, right? My man's a billionaire.
He rebuilt Mercedes when you think about it. Like the thing with, like, I went back with the move or whatever. Lewis going to Mercedes isn't like Lewis leaving McLaren to go to Mercedes. People thought Mercedes was a dud. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'll say, I can't even put it like a comparison to it, but people were saying Lewis was crazy for going to Mercedes in the first place.
Yeah.
And that panned out way in his favor. So, like, people arguing about him leaving, it's like he did exactly what Tom did for the Patriots. The Patriots were nobody. 20 years, well, obviously it's a difference, but a decade of dominance basically, and you're like, what does he have to prove as far as a fan? Like, we seen him win. I think the whole challenge of him going to Ferrari is like, you know, what does he need to accomplish? So say the W15 is a dud, which is not his fault because we've heard him for 2 years say he didn't like the car. He never liked the car.
Yeah. It
So
sucked. He couldn't push it to the potential that he wanted to.
exactly, and we saw what he did last year with the W14, and
Exactly.
it was only a continuation of the W13, which he already didn't like. So it was like you have to give him props for still being a great driver for what he did with the W14.
Exactly. And if I were in his shoes, I couldn't help but also just like complain about not being able to perform as well as I'm used to. Like, because you're at such a high position, you're used to a certain level of performance. And without that, you know, it would suck. You know, so a part of me that, you know, I 100% root for him. And plus, my man's getting $100 million a year. So not like he's struggling financially.
Right.
So,
not like he was struggling financially, but then on top of that, the whole stock market of
dude,
announcing.
What is it, 7.2 billion or something stupid?
No, it was like 4 billion, I think.
Yeah.
But I think when it first happened, it went up, it shot up to 2 billion, and then
that's what it was.
Today it was like 10 billion or 4 billion or something crazy. But it's like he already made that money back, or Ferrari already made that money back.
And I watched the interview. I guess it was Will Buxton talking with a couple of other journalists, and it's like you have the greatest driver in the sport pretty much joining the most iconic team in the history of F1. Because before F1, you know, it was Le Mans in Monza, and you know, Ferrari pretty much built F1 from the ground up. And so you have such a iconic driver who has, you know, the biggest following in F1, you know, the greatest statistic. And so you have him joining such an iconic team. And so it's like, okay, this could actually turn out pretty well.
Right.
So, you know, and
just we could have a whole, like, we could just go ahead and dedicate this whole episode to breaking down that situation, because I don't think if I forgot his name, the other principal, I think if he's still there, Lewis doesn't go first and foremost. I think Fred Vasseur going there, him having a relationship with Lewis since his GP days,
I saw that,
is a factor. And I read that since Monaco of, I think this last year, like May of last year, whenever they put the side pods on, that upgrade, that's when the Ferrari CEO, not the of the F1 team, but of Ferrari, he was like, he did want Lewis in that car. So I think it was more so Ferrari was willing to do what needed to be done to get Lewis.
Exactly.
Whereas Mercedes was just like, well, we've been doing it like this for so long. You've kind of been trashing the car or whatever, but it's just like they weren't listening to him.
Exactly.
For 2 years, like they personally speaking, and I think everybody was thinking it, like, I think after that first year, they should have just went on ahead and just scrapped it and built up. But I think pride and ego got into Mercedes.
Yeah.
I think that's what caused them to make the W14, realize they got it wrong. And that's why all of last year was just them trying to make up.
So, yeah, and seeing that, like, you know, part of me thinks during that time they were planning on Hamilton's exit strategically while, you know, focusing on, all right, you know, while we're losing, we have nothing but time to figure out how to strategize better. And it's going to be interesting to see how, you know, going from Mercedes to Ferrari, I don't know, in terms of management and strategy and whatnot, you know, when who's it, Benito left Ferrari or something like that last year. And so having a completely new team to work with, it's like, okay, you know, is Ferrari going to stress out and be like, oh my gosh, we have the greatest like driver on our team, this is going to be awesome? Or are they going to try to control it?
I'm hearing that they're trying to get, well, the everybody wants Bono to go with them, because I think that's also something, like, as a fan, you don't want that relationship to break up either. You know what I'm saying? So I think they're trying to get Bono out there as well. It's just all rumor and speculation, but I wouldn't be mad at that. Like, and then there are another rumors, like, people are jumping ship with Mercedes to go to Ferrari, which, you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't even be mad, because it's just like, as a fan watching it, and, you know, we could discuss this all the time, it's just like everybody outside of the Mercedes headquarters was like, why don't y'all just scrap it? Like, it's not going to work. Just stop trying. Go ahead. Like, they should have spent that second half of the W13 and just go ahead and rebuild the car. But They just didn't want to admit their failure, basically.
Right. I'm really interested to see how Russell will hold down the fort for Mercedes now that, he's not going to have a partner who's like, the greatest driver. Is he going to become the next, all right, let's do this, make me the next Hamilton with salary and performance and whatnot? Or is somebody going to take Hamilton's place and it's just going to turn into like an Alfa Romeo sort of team, that have drivers that butt heads and hate each other, teammates to me.
I think George would be a definite number one because I really just don't see anybody kind of coming in and being at that talent of competing.
Of course.
I also think I think the only team that will see butt heads in the future, we could have a whole different conversation about this, is McLaren.
Agreed.
But we're gonna save that.
Yeah.
As far as Mercedes, is like, who's gonna replace Hamilton? You can't replace Hamilton. That's the thing.
You can't. That's the thing. So it's like,
I think George.
What do you do?
One, I think he'll finish. I think Mercedes will still be able to build nice cars, but I think we saw too many times the last 2 years George kind of have these dips in the season, especially. I mean, Singapore was the prime example.
Exactly.
Like he could if he starts ahead of Lewis and the strategies are that split, because sometimes Lewis did start at the back end of the top 10 versus George where he was in the top 5 basically. That was the only time George really, I felt like, had a heads up on Lewis. But even then, Lewis was able to compete or outpace George. So I just really don't think George could
work up to that.
Yeah, because it's just like everybody's like, oh, George is a future champion. First and foremost,
not necessarily.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna be real. Him and Lando get that championship. They could be champions. Yeah, I don't really see it honestly, which is why I said him or McLaren could butt heads because I feel like, I feel like Oscar Piastri on multiple times is a little bit better than Lando, and I mean I feel like this year we will definitely see that really come in because I feel like Oscar, has that because Oscar isn't young. He's 26, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so Oscar is a very young dude. He's not just like some.
He's not seasoned, but at least not seasoned's a bad choice of words. Not, he's not a veteran in the sport, right?
Yeah, but he's a great driver. You saw as soon as the car got better, so did he. You know what I'm saying? Well, both of them did, but
yeah.
What McLaren did this year is what Mercedes should have did this year or last year.
Last year, yeah.
Right, that's what they should have did. Just okay, we're coming with a better frame of car, or we're just going to develop it over the season. But clearly,
it's what?
Nothing. And what else is it? It at first it was the Honda engine was just better. No, we saw this year all the Mercedes engines were better than most of the other cars. Aerodynamically, the Red Bull is better. That's what makes it pace the way it is. I think the engine is good, but if all the Mercedes engines have something that could compete with Red Bull aerodynamically, it's better than Red Bull. As far as engine, I think the engine is better still.
Yeah,
because that Red Bull engine still, or the Honda engine, isn't as reliable. They're coming in with their own engine, so we'll see how that pans out. So we know my Mercedes' engine is still top tier. So I think we'll see a lot of better aerodynamically developed Mercedes cars this year. Because I think after last year, Aston Martin, McLaren proved that, okay, the engine is good. We have to focus on the aerodynamics of the car.
Exactly.
Which with, Mercedes, I'm I think they're going to build a good car, but I think you wasted 2 years of data gathering to
fair.
Yeah, and you got to think we still got to give Mercedes props because they built a bad car.
Oh yeah,
they built a bad car and they still finished top 3 both years.
Exactly, and so it's you have to, at least from what I've seen in the top performing teams, Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, you have to take risks when it comes to building a car. Mm-hmm. Whether it be with aerodynamics or an engine or switching providers, and it could either make or break your season.
Right.
And I read on that recently, one of their technical engineers for Red Bull, it's okay, are we going to continue with our strategy that we've had for the last 2 years, or is something out of left field? What he was saying is is that going to screw us over?
Right.
they've had a fantastic run for the last 2 to 3 years, but all dominance comes to an end at some point. So whether it be 3 years to 5 years to 10 years to whenever.
And
so
I do have some.
That's my main concern.
No, I have a little sympathy for Red Bull because I feel like they are a what is it? They're a product of their own destruction, if that makes sense. But I'm not talking about the current problems, but I'm saying Red Bull has that cheating label because of Abu Dhabi 1. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, yeah, and I was like, what if Lewis did win? Red Bull would be looking like the hero right now because they lost in Abu Dhabi the way that they did, right? Safety car or whatever, flat out lost to Lewis. Then they came into this new regulation and just wiped everybody out. I would have been like, I think that they would have got a lot less hate if that wasn't, the narrative. But I think just piling up over the last couple of years, because I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan and I hate no, like these are great drivers.
They're fantastic people.
I look at teams as a scope. Christian Horner, though there's that little situation. He's running a good team.
And me and my dad were talking about this the other day. It's like when it comes down to the sport, are you a driver fan or are you a team fan? Right. So because they're two completely different bubbles.
Right. And I'm like, I'm a driver fan. Like at the end of the day, like Lewis leaving to Ferrari, I'm going with him to Ferrari. Like I would want to support Ferrari, but it's just like I gotta support the only black man ever in F1 history.
Hey, dude, I don't blame you, dude.
And the fact that he's like the nicest statistically. I'll say you're a Max guy, I'm a Lewis guy. I'm gonna say Lewis is the GOAT, but you're gonna say Max is the GOAT.
Well, I mean, statistically, I would 100% give the greatest driver right now just to Hamilton. I mean, not out of just because he is, but statistically proven. And he's so much more of a better driver. Like
I've been watching like the past races because with F1 TV, I've been like watching the previous seasons. Lewis is actually a fire driver. Like
it's insane.
He like actually watching his early Mercedes years before the regulation changes. He was actually a good driver. McLaren at the end, like the tail end of his McLaren days, or early McLaren days, he was actually zooming. And I think it was more like the way the cars were built back then. They were smaller, but like just to kind of discredit Lewis and how good of a driver he actually is crazy. And to see him go to Ferrari, like he's been with the top 3 F1 teams.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like Mercedes, Ferrari, like come on now, like
and to jump into Ferrari, I think it's just going to be fantastic. Like as much as I realistically think, there's going to be a little bit of a challenge because you have the greatest driver in your team. Like I said, no matter what team you pull for, person you pull for. I don't know. You've watched a little clip of Sebastian Vettel like post interview like 10 years ago. It's like no matter what, you're a Ferrari fan.
Yeah, and that's literally it's not like football because people hate the Cowboys because of the Cowboys. But Ferrari was like, I'm sorry, my allergies.
No, you're good. It's a classic.
Yeah, it's a classic team, but I think
you can't help but root for him just a little bit.
Annoying. That's basically. Hold on, we was like we was getting a little off track, but let me bring it back to like why I think this would work though.
Yeah.
Fred Vasseur. I think he's not there, none of this happens.
Agreed.
I like without question. If he's not there, none of this happens. I don't think Lewis really trusts the team. I think they spent this past year changing up their old habits. I feel like now that they know Lewis is coming in 2025, they're going to spend this year continuously growing, because we don't give Fred credit for what he did with, Sauber.
Yeah.
Like he completely, like the reason why we even look at them was because of Fred Vasseur.
Yeah.
Because Sauber was really just another F1 team. Because there used to be, like I said, I've been going back and looking at a lot of the older races. There used to be like 22 cars on the grid. So I think 12 teams, something like that. 11, 12 teams.
Yeah.
And like Sauber was in the back. Even though when Fred got there, they were still in the back. It was just the feel and the dynamic of the team that he changed that made them, like it made people support them. They were just another team on the grid. They weren't, just some bottom feeder team. Like they were a team that, certain tracks they'd be good. Most of them.
They weren't Haas, right?
Yeah. They were what Haas wanted to be or started looking like. But I think part of that also is the Ferrari engine, which that's not my only concern about Lewis going to Ferrari.
Yeah.
Like apart from, but Ferrari still has the second fastest car though.
Oh yeah, I'm interested to see, tying on to that, some of the people on the grid have Ferrari provide like technical providers, like with parts and engines and whatnot. And so it's like, okay, because Haas, they have the Ferrari. I want to say it's Ferrari engine provider. I could be wrong.
That was like a whole weird partnership. Like they work with them in the same building, but they can't.
And so it's like, okay, with that addition to their car, could Haas now without Gunther Steiner, have some new team principal and completely like rise up from the dead within the next 5 years?
And that's another thing that we got to like look out for, especially this season. Is Haas, because they just elevated somebody who's been with them the whole time. Matsuki or
something like yeah.
With him, he's been with them the whole time. If you look at Drive to Survive, half the time Gunther is talking to him.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So
yeah.
Haas comes out, or let's say the second half. I give teams like the second half of the season with a new team principal because there's a lot of changes.
Oh,
the first half is usually like the developments they made of last season.
You can't make it click in like one half.
Yeah, so we'll see the second half of Haas. If they come out and start just doing better as far as races go, even teetering with points, because they did do well. Like Nico Hulkenberg was killing it. I think their problem was tire degradation, which Ferrari also had to deal with. So that's something which is, like I said, they use the same parts. So that's a Ferrari problem. Tire degradation.
And so, like, that being said, okay, how's that actually going to affect Ferrari? Like, not just Haas, like the most iconic team in F1.
Right. And I think that's what
having the greatest driver is going to offset that. But I could be, things could go to smithereens within 5 races.
I think that's what that's why, like, I think that's one of the things where I said they'll probably work on this year is that tire degradation, because Lewis is great with tires, but if the way you built your car is flawed and the tire degradation is a reason, or is a flaw of that development, then that's a team problem to fix. I don't think Lewis could overcome that himself.
No. I mean, I feel like if that were the case, the whole team would try to jump on it. But I almost feel like because they acquired Lewis, all right, you're the greatest. You can figure this out. It can go one of 2 ways.
I think like that's old Ferrari. Like the way you kind of come in, you thinking of old Ferrari. I'm full faith in Fred Vasseur that he's coming in. No BS. And I think last year was like, okay,
all right,
the way things were going. Matteo Binotto. All right, because Matteo was also like one of those people who climbed up the Ferrari ranks. So I don't think he tried to change anything. I think he just tried to do things his way. I think Fred coming in
didn't turn out too well.
And I think Fred coming in, Fred is doing things his way,
in a different way too, in a good way.
And I think most of their development this year would be on tire degradation, because I think that's why they lost some races last year, was because they put the pressure on the car, or like, lower the car to the point where the tires didn't degrade so quickly.
Interesting, like, to kind of keep on rolling with that, the topic of Ferrari being this sort of center of attention right now. It's like, okay, now Sainz is out of a seat. Do you think he'll become like a reserve driver or something for Ferrari, or have some sort of, all right, jump ship to a complete other team? Like what are your thoughts on that?
He's been rumored to be the next guy at Audi. So the way that they're kind of projecting it, because his dad just won a rally championship with Audi at 61.
I saw that.
So like that's why everybody's saying, oh, he's going to go to Audi, because his dad's been driving rally cars with Audi for some years now.
Got it.
But so that's a rumor. And also not only Sainz, but like this changes all of silly season this year.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I'm saying? Like,
it
was that the whole thing has been like, oh, is Sainz leaving to go to Audi in 2024, 25. Now that we know he is, maybe he might look at Mercedes.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know what I'm saying? Like, so what's announcing this change, I think more people's expectation of silly season now more than ever.
Yeah.
Because I think, I think people know it's going to be Charles and Lewis.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? That's a crazy.
It's wild.
Because, you know what I'm saying? Like, because Lewis decided not to accept the 2025 contract.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm not doing it. So that's my also concern about the W15 is like,
yeah.
So
like,
he was like,
does he know that it might perform less, like as well? You know, because
yeah, they had to change everything on it.
Yeah.
So it's that. Then you got to think they have Lando and Oscar tied in for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Obviously, Max isn't going anywhere. Max is definitely going to do that. But if they bring in, Daniel Ricciardo back up there, that's also a dominant tandem. Because I think, Daniel probably won't. I think Daniel will still compete with Max. I don't know how like we'll have to wait and see for that. If that is Daniel's seat, so we'll have to wait and see about that. Where will Checo go? Because I don't think Checo.
That's as a Red Bull fan, like I'm concerned. Like once we lose him, I don't know if they'll continue a contract or if they'll bump up. They'll. I won't say this, but take Ricardo and put him back as the number 2 driver.
Right.
Because he's at their partner team.
Yeah.
So about the whole name thing, that's a whole other discussion. I'm salty about that.
Let's not even talk about this team name.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see that.
Yeah, so we're not going to discuss that. Them things is just that's where I think a lot of fans are starting to get a little untrustworthy of F1 because it's obviously starting to become a sponsorship.
Yeah.
Sport rather than a sport.
Yeah.
Because I was like, there was the Porsche rumors for so long. I'm like, why didn't they just give Porsche AlphaTauri? Like,
pretty much,
they could have literally did that. But now there's like, we're bringing AlphaTauri out of Italy into here, and then we're gonna give them a freaking Visa card, like
dog.
And that's why we're not talking about it because I'm about to start cursing on here. But yeah, but that's what we have to look at now because maybe if Lewis had given some indication that he would say Lewis didn't announce it and then he was staying for 2025, maybe they would have kept Checo.
Yeah,
but now you got to think Checo, saying because I think Checo could compete with George on a pace term.
Yeah,
because I think the car helps Checo a little bit. Machinery, that's a whole different conversation. We're not even going to talk about that. But I think Checo and the Red Bull is very beneficial for him.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I would agree.
Now they need somebody who will be able to defend Lewis and Charles.
Yeah.
Because I think because I personally think if it's Max versus both of them, it could go either way. Because I don't think Lewis. Because I still think Lewis will outpace Charles. Maybe not in qualifying, but I think in race terms.
I would agree. I mean, he's, like you said, an overall better driver.
Yeah, that's the truth of the matter. Charles gets a little, childish. I'm not gonna say the word, but he gets a little childish on the radio, especially whenever he gets too close for to Carlos. But I don't think he'll be able to do that with Lewis. Like if they say, "Hey, Lewis, up the pace," it'll probably go from a 5 second, not 5 second, 5/10. I'm trying to get that right. 5/10 difference to 2 seconds in a matter of half a lap. Okay, you want me to create a gap to Charles? Okay, watch this, Charles.
And from Charles' perspective, I bet he's on both sides of the coin, happy, but then also pissed because he's not going to be able to. I don't say take the spotlight for a driver on your team.
Yeah.
Back in the old days with Bottas and Hamilton, all right, your teammate's your worst enemy.
Exactly.
So as much as you have respect for each other, because you're both fantastic drivers, perform just awesome.
Right.
Everybody wants to win.
But Charles ain't gonna be able to pull that. Oh, I'm Ferrari's golden boy.
Exactly.
With Lewis. Let me put that.
Yeah. No, you're right. And
if Lewis wins a championship, number 8, and just dips out, okay, Charles goes back to number 1. But I think as long as Lewis is there, Charles will know he cannot play that card the same way he did with Sebastian.
But I think what they're hoping is that Lewis only stays there for maybe a maximum of 2 years. And he's what, 37?
I think
37?
38, I think. I think he just turned 38 in January.
And so, he's not too far from retirement. And I think because, he sees a future with Ferrari only for a little bit and, he's old, getting in a new phase, similarly what we saw happen with Tom Brady when he went to Tampa, he did it for a year, and then, or 2 years, and then peaced out.
Right.
So,
but I think that was different. I think his life kind of came in because some like Tom had a Facebook documentary and Giselle, even before they won, what Super Bowl was it? I think
I was about to say I cannot remember for the life of me.
I think it was the year before or around the time. It was around the last 2 Super Bowls within that little time span. Giselle was already saying she wants him to retire. She'd been saying it. And then for Tom hey, I'm thinking about retiring, then go to Tampa, stay, win the Super Bowl, and then kind of stay. You know, I felt like that was different, something we can't even discuss. But I'm looking, or also somebody who could replace, Lewis at Mercedes, Fernando.
That's what I'm thinking. My man's 41, 42, and so it's like,
and a lot of former drivers are saying that Fernando got that second, that refreshing new challenge, and he's still racing, he's still going. So I think we just have to wait and see as far as how long Lewis will race with Ferrari once that happens, because 2025 is the last year of these regulations, and then 2026 is newer regulations are coming in. What would they be? We don't know yet, or I haven't looked it up. But we'll have to wait and see. So I think it's just more so about how things will start, or how things will end up being once he gets there.
Yeah, and time will tell.
Right.
I'm like freaking out because I'm like, oh, it could go good or bad, and probably I'm probably not the only one thinking that for my team.
Oh no.
For as a Ferrari fan or Mercedes fan, it's like, oh, you never know until it happens.
Right. So, and I think the only way it goes bad is if Charles tries to outdo Lewis.
Yeah.
Like,
and they're gonna be like, all right.
Apart from like I said, the culture changes that Fred is trying to make, as far as on track performance, I think it's if Charles tries to do too much. Like, you're a good driver. You're the after Max.
You can let off the gas.
After Max, you are number 1. I mean, after Max, you're number 2. And don't think that since you're the number 2 with Max and you're supposed to be Mr. Competition with him, you're better than Lewis. Like, don't get
that in your head.
Yeah, please don't, because even Max might be a little iffy about, or not iffy, but like even he might be a little scared depending on how the Ferrari looks this year. Because if the Ferrari has pace this year, and because Mercedes, they were getting Mercedes at the end of last year.
Yep,
like they were getting Mercedes
in the top. What it's like 5 to 10. It was like one or the other, right?
Like the second half, I think they beat Mercedes.
Yeah.
The 6 races or something like that out of the 10. Especially that win in Singapore helped them out a lot. So it was really just it's one of those things where, like, if Lewis gets put in that car, how long until he challenges Max? And I personally think if it gets to that point where the car's like that, then we're gonna have the argument and discussion, because I will say Lewis will come at the Max. He wants that vengeance.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt that. I mean, as a Max fan, I'm more of a Red Bull fan, like team fan, than a Max fan, because the last 2 years Max has developed a huge ego, and that's what happens with guys who have such a long winning streak. You can't help it. But also, it's like you see what happened. What was it? 2021, the last race of the season. And then they screwed over Mercedes, and so I think with Lewis joining a new team, this is a great opportunity for him to pursue that rivalry without having to be held back by Mercedes.
That because they did do him dirty.
They did him dirty, and so it's like, okay, with Fred Vasseur, who's trying to do things a different way, I think this will, like I said earlier, give Lewis a little bit of more creative freedom.
Right, exactly.
To perform how he wants, with the car that they're going to give him.
Right. So that's the whole exciting part, is just to see how.
I can't help but be excited for him, because I want to see him. As much as I pull for my team, people pull for whatever teams they pull for. I like seeing these guys succeed in new opportunities that they have.
Exactly.
It's cool. It's cool to witness that.
100%.
It's awesome. So it's time will tell. Like I said, time is going to tell.
Time is going to tell.
It's interesting though. Like, now Red Bull's going to have like the last. I want to say they're the last debut or something like that. I'm like, interesting. So I'm interested to see, like I said, with the RB20 and how their technical directors are like, okay, is this going to go great, or are we going to pull something out of left field,
right?
And, potentially have ourselves screwed.
Exactly, and I feel like that's why we have to wait to see how Lewis is going to be. We hitting like 40 minutes, so we might have to
Okay, yeah.
I didn't see like 40 minutes, but like we'll have to wait and see how Lewis plays in that car, because if he comes out into that car in 2025 and challenges Max, even
it's
though
going to be,
as far as Charles been in there, then Charles will be a clear number 2, because let's look at Vegas. Vegas was a prime example of the potential of that Ferrari.
Yeah, agreed.
You know what I'm saying? The end of the season was like showing Ferrari is making a lot of improvements. But with like Lewis getting there, if he hops in that car, let's say it takes him 5 races to really get himself, and then all of a sudden,
like, pow.
Yeah, that's when it's just like, okay, let's see how the end of the season is going to go.
Yeah,
I think they just announced too as well, because I know I said Monza 2025. They also did say Australia was going to be the season opener in 2025 as well.
Really?
So if you want to save up and look at Australia or Monza, I'm down for it.
I mean, hey, what's funny is I think I told you this earlier. I'm gonna go. Me and my family are planning a trip to Italy, and my day's gonna be in Monte Carlo. I'm gonna get to walk the circuit.
Oh, so, yeah.
It's gonna be wild. And I've never like been on a track or anything like that, and so it's gonna be cool.
Right.
So,
and if we can't, get out the country, I wouldn't mind going to Austin for sure, because that's the one race I would want to go to.
Would be freaking awesome. For me, it's that or Miami.
Austin during November, we might be able to catch a Longhorns game too.
Yeah, hey.
Just pig out for the weekend or for that week or so.
Depending on the new, because I landed a new job this weekend, and so we'll see.
Right, and congratulations too as well, my guy. 100%. I told you, it's just prayer and time.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed. I couldn't agree more.
But yeah, so we wrapping up.
I think so. I think this is it. Well, for those that are gonna go back and watch it, appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode of Through the Chicane Media. Again, I'm Jonathan, and
I'm Carolina Craig, your boy Craig,
and we look forward to seeing you guys on our next episode. Thanks for joining.
Appreciate you.